Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to be making it a bit more efficient to get multiple pages. Here in this function, you can see that we've had to create a client session. And each session, as I said earlier, contains a pool of connections so that not all connections have to be created each time. And also contains a cookie storage so that any cookies that websites send us can be shared across requests made with the same session. If you're not sure what cookies are, I've attached the resource link to this lecture, just with brief explanation on what they are. So we then use the session, which uses a connection from that pool that was just created, in order to get the URL and get the content and so forth. It sends a request to the server and then awaits the data to come back. The function can suspend at that point until the data comes back. But of course, we said that we've created a connection pool here in the client session so that we don't have to recreate the connection every time. But we've not really done that, because each time we do this, we create a new connection pool. So instead of a single connection, we're creating a whole bunch of connections each time we want to fetch a page. And then we're only using one of them. So this is not great. Instead, what we should do is create the session and use it for all the URLs we want to request, instead of creating a session for each time we want to request a URL. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to split this out into another thing that is going to allow us to create multiple tasks. So async def, get multiple pages, and to this thing we're going to pass the loop and also the URLs we want to get. Notice that this is an unpacked argument there, so we can pass in many different arguments, one for each URL that we want to get. Then we're going to say tasks is an empty list, async with http.client session. And to the client session, we can actually pass in the loop that we want to use, which is the one we create down here. And the parameter is going to be this loop. The reason to do that is just so it doesn't create a new loop. Now, when you do async.io.getEvent loop, no matter where you do that in your program, it's always going to give you the same loop. But in case you forget to do that, passing the loop in here can be quite handy, just so not a new one is created that maybe runs independently or doesn't run until complete. So this is just a safeguard to make sure that you use the loop that you've defined earlier. So with HTTP client session as session, we're then going to populate our tasks list and wait for them. So for each URL that we've got here, we're going to say tasks.append fetch page of this session, the URL, like so. Now, when we do this, what we do is we call this fetch page function. That creates a coroutine, and that gets then put into our tasks list. At the end of the loop, but inside this statement, this context manager, we're then going to wait for them. Okay? So grouped tasks is going to be async.io.gather. And this is going to be our tasks. Again, all this is doing is gathering all the tasks that we've put in our list, and it's treating them as a single task so that we can then execute it in a loop, like loop run until complete. Except instead of running them using this loop, we're going to await them. So return await grouped tasks. This, all it's going to do, as you know, is, yield from. So it's going to allow us to suspend the execution here and wait until something happens here and then resume the function and possibly repeat all of that until this returns. And this will return when all of the tasks are finished. Okay? So when we do this, now we can run until complete this get multiple pages. Let's finish off this code before we review it and make sure that it all makes sense. This fetch page is still creating its own session here. We don't want to do that. So what we're going to do is delete that entirely and then make sure that we pass in the session. Smession. Make sure that we pass in the session correctly spelled there. then pass it in here as well. Just so that has access to the session we've created. Okay, now our tasks are no longer going to be fetch page, they're just going to be the strings, and we shall not call them tasks, we're going to call them URLs. So now we have 50 times google.com inside our list, and what we can do is run until complete our get multiple pages with the loop and the URLs. Notice how URLs is a star URLs, and so we must also pass in the arguments individually by unpacking them. If you prefer, you could just pass in a list. That would be fine as well, and then all you'd have to do is delete them too. It's up to you how you want to do that. All right, so what we've got now, let's review that, is 50 strings of google.com. Then we pass them all to this get multiple pages function, and we also pass in the loop that is running through as a task scheduler. So they go in there. The loop is used in the client session just so it doesn't create a new loop in case we forget to pass it in or we forget to create one. It will say, hey, you didn't pass me anything, something's wrong. So this is a safeguard. And the URLs, we are then going to iterate over them and append the coroutine that they create into our tasks list. Remember, we could suspend the function execution before or during this creation of the session, but inside it, once we go in it, it doesn't suspend at any point. All it does, iterates over all the URLs and creates all the coroutines synchronously one after another. There's no suspension anywhere inside here. So we create all the coroutines, and then we're going to gather them as one. What this does is it essentially awaits each task and only returns when they're all complete. We then await that. So if we want to suspend, we can suspend in between each task, or we can suspend at the start before we start any task, or we can suspend at the end once all the tasks are finished. That means that these tasks that we group here are all running individually in this event loop. So that is what this gather does. And then we return the awaiting of that. So this function only returns when this has finished running, but it can suspend on the way. So when it has finished running, that returns, and that is the end, and that function has run until it has been completed. So that's why we do run until complete. Run until complete is going to run until this return actually executes. And that's only going to execute when this has been fully awaited and this has completed itself. And once that happens, we can print out that all of them took the amount of time they took. It seems slightly more complex, but there is a key performance improvement, which is that you're not creating a session for each of the pages that you want to fetch. And of course, as long as you do create your event loop first, this thing here is not necessary. You could not pass it in if you want. It's totally up to you. Either of them will work. So you can run this, and as you'll see, you still get the same thing. Yeah. Notice how they seem to take slightly longer now. This could be due to any number of reasons. Somebody else using the internet in the house, or Google being more hammered down by somebody making requests, or anything else. If you do want to pass the loop in there, this is fine as well, and this is what we did earlier, and it'll work in the same way. It seems like this was now faster, possibly because it didn't have to go and get the loop each time. So this is possibly a performance improvement as well. Anyway, that's it for this video. I just wanted to show you how to make this a bit more generic in order for you to then be able to use this in our book scraping program. So if you want to go ahead and try that out, try to turn our book scraper into something that uses these two functions and an event loop to get all the pages instead of getting them synchronously, I'm pretty sure you can do that now. All you have to do is import a couple of libraries that we've already installed, copy these functions, and then instead of going through each URL one at a time, get them all at the same time first, and then you'll be able to use their contents. Again, it may be slightly complicated, may take some time and some investigation. Once you're done, or if you want to see how we do it, come back and we will implement that together. Okay, and see you in the next video.